Good day, viewers at home. You're welcome to Legacy Channel. Legacy Channel is a program that discusses service unto God. And today we are back on another episode. Today we shall be discussing the call of God. And my name is Dotun Oshuntola. I'm going to be your presenter today. And in the studio I have a man of God who is a regular on this show. He is the president of Christ, the Answer Ministry, based in Ibadan, Nigeria. It's Reverend Oluwagbemika Oluwosho. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Today we'll be discussing the call of God, like I said. In Nigeria today, we have so many churches. Don't you think we have so many churches in Nigeria?
Well, we have churches, plenty churches in Nigeria. But I wouldn't say there are too many. We have a lot of churches in Nigeria, so many churches, but I don't think there are too many. Because when you look at the population of the nation, we talk of almost 200 million people. And when you look at it vis-a-vis the number of churches, the ratio, I think maybe we are not too many. The churches we have in Nigeria are not too many. In view of the large population of Nigeria.
Okay, based on our population, the churches are not too many.
I don't think there are too many.
But there is another question I want to ask. There is too many religious activity in the nation, but most of them are concentrated in the city. Is there anything wrong with that, sir?
Yeah, there's a lot of religious activities in the nation, actually. But the main challenge, just like you said, is that the focus is more on the cities, the mega cities, the bigger cities, the financial hubs of the nation. That's not good enough, actually, because we have, normally across the world, you have more people in the villages than in the cities. When you look at the statistics of any nation, you will normally have at the least about 60% of the people in the rural areas and just about 35% of the nation in the cities. So, but in our nation, the religious activities are concentrated more in the major cities, which means that about 60% of the population are not being reached. So that, I think, is the problem.
So we have the larger population in the village.
Normally, anywhere in the world, the larger population are always in the villages.
But is there any way the problem of infrastructure had really hindered the will of the gospel?
Yeah.
Do you have word of advice for the leaders?
Yeah. Actually, the reason why people concentrate more, one of the major reasons, I shouldn't say the reason, one of the major reasons why people concentrate their works in the cities is because of the availability of infrastructures, of a lot of things provided. Like you talk about electricity, you have more electricity in the cities than you have in the villages. You talk about internet, you talk about even water supply, in all of that. Nobody wants to, most people don't want to go through the trouble of looking for water to drink, looking for this, particularly in a nation where it looks like people have to provide these facilities by themselves. So it's more convenient to be in the cities. So it would be really good if our leaders can invest more or can deal with these infrastructural issues. Like some villages, you find it difficult to even come out from the village to the city. If you need to come to the city to do one or two things, you talk of very bad roads, talk of almost no transportation, no vehicles who want to ply those roads when you have options. So a lot of people, even farmers, struggle so hard to bring out their farm produce to the market to sell. So if a pastor, if a church stays in such a place, they have a lot of issues to contend with. So if the government can invest in that direction and put in more facilities in the rural areas, like it is done in other nations of the world, because if you go to Europe, you go to the Americas, for instance, of course, the same situation happens, that you have over 60% of the people in the rural areas. But the rural areas in those places are not rural. They are only small settlements, and facilities are very, very available. As a matter of fact, a lot of people will prefer to stay there because your accommodation will be cheaper. Almost every facility you have in the city, you find also there at cheaper prices. So you find people living in the smaller settlements and traveling distances to go work in the city. That's what happens in the developed world. So if in our nation too, or in Africa generally, if our leaders help to develop the villages, it will accelerate the process of the preaching of the gospel in those areas too.
That's very nice. Talking about the sacrifices, sacrifice, the early church was very eager to make sacrifice, but it's not that common today. In your own opinion, is the era of sacrifice, has it gone? The era of sacrifice, has that gone now?
Yeah, the era of sacrifice has not gone. It cannot go for the church. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 1, Paul was explaining something very fundamental to the church. He said, I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice unto God. That is the bottom line. Our service unto God rests upon two basic things. One, faithfulness, and the second one, sacrifice. You cannot overemphasize the subject of sacrifice. Unfortunately, over time, we have done so much of teachings in the church that focuses more on benefits and what people stand to derive as they serve God. And there's a dimension where that kinds of drowns the importance of sacrifice. And I guess that's one of the major reasons why a number of churches we are planted in the cities that are more convenient. And people are finding it difficult to go and live in villages, to go and bear the pains of having to, lack one thing or another in the process of preaching the gospel. But the truth of the matter is that the church can't move forward without sacrifice. It was sacrifice that brought the church this far, and it is sacrifice that will take us to where Jesus Christ wants us to go. We need a lot of sacrifice.
So sacrifice has taken us to where we are today.
It was sacrifice that brought us here. When you look at people like Paul, who knew they were going to die, and they went ahead into death. That was sacrifice. Peter was crucified in Rome, but he knew as he was approaching Rome, he knew he was going to die there.
And he went back.
And he went. So people knew what sacrifice meant, and they went all the way out and still accepted those sacrifices. They made the sacrifice. So we can't, and when you look at other contemporary ministers who have gone before us, they did it by sacrifice. The whites who brought the gospel to Africa, they had the comfort of their nations. They left it behind and came here in the midst of sacrifice. They made a lot of sacrifice. They went through a lot of pains to bring the gospel to us. And we can't just go forward without that sacrifice. It is sacrifice that will take us to where we're going.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Viewers at home, you have heard him say it was sacrifice that brought us this far. And for us to get to where Christ is taking us to, we need that same sacrifice. We'll be right back.
Ìdáhùn dé sí gbogbo ìbéèrè.
Answer Bible Church lolúwa sọ̀dọ̀ ìdáhùn sí gbogbo ìbéèrè ọmọ aráyé. O fẹ́ lówó, o fẹ́ kọ́lé, ọmọ ló fẹ́ bí àbí o fẹ́ rè lú òyìnbó. Ẹ̀bùn ẹ̀mí mímọ́ tààrà ló nílò. O jẹ́ wá kí bàbá Reverend Olúwagbémiga olówó sọ yóò sàsọtẹ́lẹ̀ sáyé rẹ̀. Kò lè bẹ́gbẹ́gbẹ́ kò lè bọ́gbàtò. Ẹ̀mí mímọ́ dé, ẹ̀mí òkùnkùn ẹ̀bìlà. Tani jẹ́ kó wárápá níwájú akúnyányán. Fúlẹ́ńgẹ́ iná dà níwájú omi àdúrà. Ayé lémi títí mo sáde bí ìsinmi o. The Answer Bible Church ní number 1 Answer Way Ògúndépò off Ẹgbẹ́dá Àtúbà Road lẹ́bàá Muslim nire tèmi wá. Ìsìn ọjọ́ ìsinmi lédè Gẹ̀ẹ́sì. Aago 8 sí 9 àbọ̀ òwúrọ̀. Ìtọ́nisọ́nà mímọ́ pẹ̀lú ìwé mímọ́. Láago 9 àbọ̀ sí 10 àbọ̀. Ìsìn lédè Yorùbá. Láago 10 àbọ̀ sí 12 gán. Lọ́jọ́ ìsinmi ẹ̀wẹ̀. Agbára ìsọdọ̀tún ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ajé Monday 6 to 7 a.m. àti nírọ̀lẹ́ ọjọ́ ajé kan náà 6 to 7:30 p.m. Ìjìnlẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ deep teaching di every Wednesday. Ọjọ́rú 6 to 8 p.m. Bẹ́ẹ̀ gbogbo ọjọ́ ẹtì tó gbẹ̀yìn nínú oṣù. Last Friday of every month ní ṣọ́ọ̀rù agbára wa. Gbogbo ẹ̀ nínú ìjọ wa The Answer Bible Church number 1 Answer Way Ògúndépò off Ẹgbẹ́dá Àtúbà Road via Muslim Lagos Ibadan Expressway. Jésù ni Olúwa.
Welcome back. Sir, you said something the other time that the gospel can never get to where Christ is actually taking us to without sacrifice.
Yeah, without sacrifice.
But sir, how can we address the problem of scrambling for church members in major cities?
You mean where churches are scrambling for members?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the backlash of the problem in the church. A situation where every church is struggling for space in the major cities. Definitely, that kind of problem will come up because you have more supply than demand.
More supply than demand.
The moment there are so many parts of churches, many churches squatting for space, some of them you have up to 3-4 churches in the same building. Of course, you have to scramble for members. And it's unfortunate. It's not supposed to be so. Unfortunately, in the villages, in the rural places, there are so many villages without churches at all. There are some settlements up to 10-15 villages around the same cluster of area without any church at all, which is really unfortunate.
Because we have supply and demand.
The supply is far beyond the demand in the cities.
Well, sir, in some churches, some churches, pastors and evangelists are grossly underused. They are used to make announcements and their lives. Is that good enough, sir?
It's the same problem. I remember we did a crusade in a village some years ago, and we had a number of converts. Now he had to go back to the village to do a follow-up on the converts. And it had to be on a Sunday. So while I was preparing to go, the Holy Spirit instructed me to invite one of the partners of our ministry to go with me that day. So, and good enough, he was available. So we went together into the village. We got there quite late. The converts have been waiting for hours. They waited and waited. They went tired of waiting. They were singing and rejoicing and waiting for us to arrive. And when we got there, they were it was so ecstatic. Everybody was really excited. And I shared with them just one verse of the scriptures. It was a very simple message. And then when it was time to pray, I closed my eyes and I asked my partner to pray. A whole minute went and I didn't hear any sound, so I opened my eyes and looked in his direction. He was weeping. I waited a little bit more. When he wouldn't pray, I prayed. And I went back, I asked him, why were you crying? Why couldn't you pray? He said he saw himself. He saw himself because the church he was worshiping in, he was supposed to be a minister there.
Oh.
And according to him, they were always scrambling, fighting and preaching schedule. Nobody is giving him a preaching opportunity. He's always doing announcements and things like that. And what really troubled him was this village. There was no church. They were waiting for me to come. And all I just did was I shared one verse of the scripture with them. They were so excited, so happy. you know, and he felt, oh, I had been wasting my life fighting over what was not, while all the villages are waiting for people to come and share with them. So it's a big problem in the church. You see a lot of people who are supposed to be a blessing to several others in the villages, in the rural places, and they are fighting over the pulpits with the pastor. They are struggling with pastor. He's preaching every time. Why is he not allowing me to preach? I have revelation. There are people in the villages who are eager to receive the word. So it's a backlash of the problem. When we choose not to go to the villagers, when we choose not to reach out to the people we need to reach out to, we will be scrambling for the little space available in the city. It's unfortunate.
That is so touching. There are some people somewhere else, they are looking for somebody to pastor them.
Waiting eagerly for people to speak to them.
Yeah, so most cities, they are littered with posters, flyers, and handbill. And even some churches are even struggling to get space to display their own poster too. What do you think about that stuff?
Sometimes they are even fighting for the available space. You see them fighting. Somebody posted something on my own poster, another person did this, and they're fighting over all of that. It's the same problem. The same problem in the church. Because we have neglected what we ought to do. We left all the villages, all the other places, even the small cities. There are small towns, there are a number of hamlets, towns that are smaller than the big cities. As long as it's not very financially viable in terms of the money that is going to come in, a lot of churches are not ready to go there. You want to go to Port Harcourt, you want to go to Lagos, you want to go to Abuja, all the big cities where we are sure so much money is going to come. It just points to the fact that the Church of Jesus Christ had derailed from the focus of evangelism. Our focus had gone into money. Yeah, definitely money is important in ministry, but our focus is not just to do ministry. Our focus more is on how much we are going to make. How much we are going to make from this venture. You are thinking of the money you want to make. A situation where some churches even take loans to fund what they do. We take loans to start a church. And of course, if you did take a loan, you are thinking of how to pay it back. You wouldn't take a loan to go to a village where you are sure that money is not going to come. So that is the challenge of the church.
So you're trying to say that the church have actually shifted their focus away from what it used to be before.
We shifted so far. And when you shift a little bit today, it keeps expanding as you go down the line. So our focus keeps expanding away from the path that He set for us. And it's unfortunate. We need to go back to that focus that the Lord gave to us.
We have to go back to the focus He has given to us. Yeah. So, is it every call that must start a new church or a new ministry?
Yeah, calls, there are different types of calls actually. It's not every call that should start a church. Unfortunately, in Nigeria today we have been starting churches from every kind of call. Almost everyone who receives a call wants to start a church. I don't think we have enough time to talk about that now, but the truth of the matter is that it's not every call that ought to start a church. As a matter of fact, there are some calls that has nothing to do with church. Church is just one of the very many things that God is doing. So the fact that you receive a call does not mean you should start a church. And even if your call has something to do with church, not every call that has to do with church necessitates pioneering a church. There are sometimes your call has to do with a church, but the church is already existing. It's just like God spoke to Joshua. Joshua had to walk with Moses. God spoke to Bezalel and Oholiab. He prepared them. They had to walk with Moses. Moses already had the call before they got their one. So sometimes God is going to give you an assignment that is supposed to facilitate an existing church. But oftentimes, because people don't have the correct understanding, they assume that because they receive a call, that means they must start a church. It is not so.
So it is not correct that everybody, once you just receive a call, you must look for a location to plant your church.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is dangerous. Not just that it's not correct, it is dangerous because if you start a church that God had not instructed you to start, it becomes a major problem for you to handle. There are a lot of dangers that comes along with that. When Saul went and offered a sacrifice that God did not commission him to offer, he brought destruction to his ministry. He couldn't go further. So it is dangerous to start a church when God had not instructed you to start a church.
So everybody has to find out what the Lord wants them to do specifically.
Definitely, we need to take time and stay in the presence of God, understand it clearly before you take any step.
Thank you for this word of wisdom, sir.
You're welcome.
Viewers at home, I believe the Lord has spoken one or two things to you from what we had today. It is very dangerous to start what God doesn't ask you to start, or to derail from what He asks you to do in particular. Till we come your way again, remain blessed.
Amokoko